She worked 3 jobs and slept on a sofa with 1 broken leg, and she raised her daughter on cold coffee, quiet prayers, and a kind of stubbornness nobody can teach. He owned a glass penthouse above Central Park and ran a fund worth more than some small countries. When she walked into his home for a job interview and did the one thing no other candidate had thought to do, neither of their lives stayed the same. How does a single mother with nothing on her resume but calluses earn a billionaire's trust? Not with the right words, but with a wrench. Stay with me, because this one will change the way you look at the people the world is trained to walk past. This is the story of Nia Freeman, who proved that character is never printed on a resume. It is written in what you do when no one is watching. It was a cold Thursday night in Manhattan, the kind where the wind moves down the avenues like a blade and the street lights lie in the wet pavement like scattered coins. 52 floors above all of it, on the Upper West Side, a penthouse sat quiet in the dark. The floors were pale marble, cold under bare feet. The walls were mostly glass, framing a view of Central Park that most people only ever saw in magazines. The furniture was modern, spare, expensive. Everything in its place, everything perfect, everything empty. In the open kitchen, a coffee machine hummed, one of those Italian ones that cost more than a used car. It made a flawless cup every single time. Beside it sat 1 mug. There was always only 1 mug. Desmond Hale stood at the window with the city spread beneath him. He was 34, tall and broad-shouldered, with deep brown skin and a clean-shaved head that made strangers guess him older than he was. He wore a plain gray t-shirt and sweatpants, no watch, no shoes, just a man alone in a room built for a family that had never come. Desmond was the founder of Hale Capital Partners, one of the most successful real estate firms in the country. His company bought tired, neglected apartment buildings in neighborhoods everyone else had written off, rebuilt them from the studs, and rented them at prices working families could actually pay. Affordable housing, that was his whole thing, the thing that set him apart from every other man in a good suit downtown. He had started with nothing. He grew up on the south side of Chicago, raised by his mother, Coretta, who cleaned other people's rooms and other people's houses so her son could eat. His father left when Desmond was 6 and never once looked back. Coretta raised him alone in a 1-bedroom where the radiator quit every January and the landlord never came. She died when Desmond was 16. A stroke right there on the kitchen floor, a dish towel still in her hand. Desmond found her. He made the call. He sat in the hospital hallway by himself because there was no one else to call. After that, he made himself a promise. He would never be powerless again. He would never depend on anyone. He would build something so large and so solid that no one could ever take it from him. And he did. 1 million by 25, 100 million by 30, 1 billion by 34. People called him a visionary. Magazines ran his face. Business schools taught his model. He had everything the world tells a man to want. But that night, Desmond was just tired. Tired of the meetings, the handshakes, the smiles aimed at what he had instead of who he was. He carried his coffee to the sofa and sat down in front of a stack of resumes. More than 20 of them, all on heavy cream paper, all from Harvard and Yale and Columbia and Wharton, all flawless. Perfect grades, perfect internships, perfect references. He had interviewed every one of them over 3 weeks, and every one had left him feeling the same way. Empty. They said the right things. They sat up straight, they smiled on cue. None of them were real. None of them surprised him. He was hiring a personal assistant, someone who would stand beside him in every room, every decision. Someone he could trust. And trust was the one line item no resume could show him. He picked up the top page, Yale, summa cum laude, 3 years at a bank. 4 languages. On paper, perfect. In the interview, he had asked one question. What would you do if you saw something broken and no one asked you to fix it? The young man had blinked and said, I'd report it to the appropriate department. Desmond had ended it there. He did not want someone who filed problems. He wanted someone who fixed them, and he could not explain that to his HR team, or even entirely to himself. He only knew he hadn't found it yet. He leaned back and shut his eyes. The coffee cooled. He did not know it yet, but the answer he had been hunting for was about to walk through his door. The next morning, Across the city in a neighborhood Desmond had never once set foot in, a woman named Nia Freeman was already awake. It was 4:30. The alarm hadn't gone off. It didn't need to. Her body had learned to wake before the sun a long time ago, because there was always too much to do to waste the hours sleeping. She sat up slowly on the sofa, not a bed, a sagging thing with one broken leg propped level by a stack of old phone books. That sofa was where Nia slept every night, because the only real bed in the studio belonged to her daughter. The apartment was in the Bronx, third floor of a building that smelled of mildew and old cooking oil, barely bigger than a parking space. Kitchen, bedroom, and living room were all one room. The walls were thin enough to hear the neighbors argue, the baby 2 doors down, the pipes groaning inside the plaster like something alive. Nia stood and stretched. Her back ached. It always ached. She crossed the 3 steps to the sink and turned the tap. Cold. There'd been no hot water in the building for a week. The landlord kept saying he'd fix it, the way he'd been saying it for 2 months. She made a pot of the cheapest coffee from the dollar store. Thin and bitter, but it did the job. And while it brewed, she opened the refrigerator. Half a box of cereal, milk a day from turning, 2 eggs. That was it. She poured the cereal into a bowl for Zuri and cracked the eggs into a pan for herself. She would need the energy today. Today was not like the others. Nia worked 3 jobs. Mornings she cleaned rooms at a mid-range hotel in Midtown. Afternoons she delivered food on a bike, through rain and heat, an app buzzing on her phone. Evenings she washed dishes at a restaurant in Harlem. In the seams between, she picked Zuri up from school and left her with Miss Hattie across the hall. 71, retired, a bad hip that made the stairs a war. Miss Hattie watched Zuri for free, not exactly free. Nia fixed things in return. A leaking pipe one week, a cabinet hinge the next, a toilet that wouldn't stop running. Whatever needed fixing, Nia fixed it. That was the deal. That was how they survived. Not on money, but on hands and trust. Nia knew how to fix things because her grandfather had taught her. Everyone called him Pops. He'd been a plumber in Baltimore for 40 years, his hands rough as sandpaper, his back bent from decades under sinks and behind walls. But his mind stayed sharp, and his heart was the biggest she had ever known. Pops raised Nia after her mother left. He taught her everything. How to read a joint. How to tell whether a faucet wept from the valve or the washer. How to bring a dead water heater back with a wrench and patience. Fixing things isn't about the thing, Nia girl, he used to say. It's about paying attention. Most people don't break things on purpose. They just stop paying attention. Pops died when she was 19. Lung cancer. He left her nothing but his old toolbox and a lifetime of knowledge no school ever handed out. She still had that toolbox. It sat in the corner beside the sofa where she slept. She never opened it anymore. She never got rid of it either. At 5:15, Zuri woke. 5 years old, big brown eyes, 2 thick braids Nia readed fresh every Sunday night. She padded out from behind the curtain that split her bed from the rest of the room, rubbing her eyes. Mama. Morning, baby. Breakfast's on the table. Zuri climbed onto the chair and started her cereal, then looked at her mother by the sink with coffee and a phone. Mama, are we going somewhere nice today? Nia looked at the screen. An address, a penthouse on the Upper West Side. She had found the listing 3 days ago. Personal assistant to the CEO of a real estate company, no degree required. She had sent an email with no resume, just a few honest lines about who she was and why she wanted the work. She had not expected an answer. Yesterday one came, come to this address Thursday 10 a.m. Ask for Desmond Hale. She had searched the name and nearly dropped the phone. A billionaire. She was going to a billionaire's home for an interview. A woman who cleaned hotel rooms for a living. She smiled at her daughter. Maybe, baby, maybe. That night, after Zuri was asleep, Nia did something she had not done in a long time. She took out the one outfit nice enough for an interview. Dark slacks and a cream blouse, both from a thrift store, both clean but creased. She owned no iron, so she did what she always did. Boiled a pot of water, held the blouse on a hanger, and pressed the hot base of the pot against the fabric, slowly, working each wrinkle flat. It took almost an hour. When she finished, the clothes looked decent. Not perfect. Decent. She hung them on the back of the door and lay down. Through the wall, the pipes groaned. Somewhere a faucet dripped. She knew the sound as exactly. A worn washer, a 10-cent part the landlord would never replace. She whispered into the dark, "Please, just let something good happen tomorrow. Just this once." Then she slept. Morning came. She dropped Zuri at Miss Hattie's door at 7:30. "You look nice," Miss Hattie said, reading her the way she always did. "Big interview. Uptown, uptown, uptown." Nia nodded. Miss Hattie reached out and squeezed her hand. "You deserve this, child. Whatever it is, you deserve something good." Nia squeezed back but said nothing. She had stopped believing in deserving a long time ago. She believed in showing up. The subway from the Bronx to the Upper West Side took 45 minutes, and she stood the whole way. She watched the neighborhoods change through the glass like someone slowly turning a dial. Graffiti and flickering light, then cleaner platforms, then polished tile and bright ads. When she came up from the station, the air felt different, cleaner, quieter, the buildings taller, the sidewalks wider. No one looked at her. She was invisible here. She did not look down. Shoulders back, chin up, the way Pops taught her. You don't have to look rich to be worth something. The building was a glass tower with a dark green awning and gold lettering, a doorman out front in a pressed uniform and white gloves. "Good morning. I have an appointment with Mr. Desmond Hale, 10 o'clock. His eyes moved slowly, from her face to her scuffed flats to the worn purse with the zipper she had sewn shut by hand, and his expression never changed, but she felt it anyway. "You don't belong here." "Name? Nia Freeman." He dialed, murmured, hung up. 52nd floor, private elevator on the left. The elevator was mirrored on every wall. As it rose, she saw herself clearly for the first time that morning. The blouse ironed with a pot, the thrift slacks, the scuffed flats, the hand-sewn purse. She saw every long night and skipped meal, and she saw something else too. A woman still standing, still showing up, still climbing. The doors opened onto a penthouse that took her breath away, floor to sailing glass. A view of Central Park, so wide it looked painted. A marble island longer than her whole apartment, and a silence so deep it could only belong to a place where one person lived. Desmond stood by the island in a white dress shirt, with the sleeves rolled to the elbow, dark slacks, no tie, relaxed but with sharp, watching eyes. "Nia Freeman?" "Yes, sir. Come in. Please, have a seat." He gestured toward 2 sofas across a glass table. She started to follow him, and as she passed the kitchen, she heard it, drip. She slowed, drip. Her head turned toward the sink. Drip. It was a sound most people would never notice, background noise, a small steady beat of water on steel. To Nia, it was the loudest thing in the room. She knew what it was before she looked. A leaking faucet. The kind that starts small and grows, that runs up your bill and ruins the finish on the sink. The kind a 10-cent rubber washer fixes in 5 minutes. Most people would have sat down on that expensive sofa and answered the billionaire's questions. Nia was not most people. She stopped walking. Desmond turned. "Everything okay?" "Excuse me, Mr. Hale, do you mind if I—" She did not finish. She was already walking to the sink. He stood there, coffee halfway to his lips, and watched this stranger who had been in his home for less than 30 seconds, walk straight past the sofas and the glass table and go directly to his kitchen. Nia crouched, opened the cabinet, and looked at the pipes and valves the way a doctor reads a chart. Quick, focused, trained. She touched the cold water valve, feeling for vibration, and found it. The seat was worn, the washer no longer sealing. Here is what most people do not know. A dripping faucet is almost never a big problem. 9 times out of 10, it is a small rubber washer that has aged and lost its shape. A part that costs less than $1. But most people call a plumber and pay $200 for a 5-minute job. Knowing where to look is the whole difference. Nia knew where to look. She tightened the packing nut around the valve stem with her fingers, just enough to compress the washer back into place. Not too tight, tight enough. The drip slowed. Then it stopped. Silence. She stood, wiped her hands on her slacks because there was no towel, straightened her blouse, walked back and sat down. "Sorry about that," she said. "The dripping was going to bother me the whole interview." Desmond did not move. 20 candidates from the best schools in the country had sat on that sofa. Not one of them had heard the faucet. Not one had looked at his home and seen a thing that needed fixing. They had seen a penthouse. Nia had seen a leak. He looked at her, really looked. Not at her clothes or her shoes or the sewn-shut zipper, but at her hands. They were not soft. They were working hands. Hands that had carried and built and fixed, that had held a child and turned a valve in the same morning. Something shifted in him then, quiet but deep, like a key turning in a lock that had been stuck for years. He did not know it yet, but the interview was already over. He sat down across from her, set his cup on the glass, and looked at her a while. "Tell me something that isn't on your resume." She let out a small, nervous laugh. "That's easy, sir. There's nothing on my resume." He tilted his head. "Nothing? I don't have one, never needed one. The jobs I work don't ask for resumes. They ask if you can show up on time, and if your back is strong enough." Most people would have been ashamed to say that in a billionaire's home. Nia said it the way she said everything. Straight, no apology. "Fair enough. Then tell me something real about yourself." She looked down at her hands, at the small scar on her left thumb from a pipe fitting that slipped when she was 14. "My grandfather raised me. Everyone called him Pops. Plumber in Baltimore, 40 years. He could fix anything with a pipe or a valve. He taught me everything, not just plumbing. Life. He sounds like a good man. Best man I ever knew." She looked up. He used to say, "Fixing things isn't about the thing. It's about paying attention." Most people don't break things on purpose. They just stop paying attention. The room went quiet. Desmond didn't answer right away. He sat there as if she had reached into his chest and pulled out something he'd been carrying for years without a name for it. Because that sentence described exactly what he had been feeling about his company, his people, his whole life. Everyone around him had stopped paying attention. They showed up, did their jobs, said the right things, and never once saw what was breaking in front of them. And here was a woman who had heard a dripping faucet in a stranger's kitchen inside 30 seconds. "Nia," he said, leaning forward, "I'll be honest. I've interviewed more than 20 people for this. Harvard, Yale, Columbia. Perfect grades, perfect answers. Not one of them noticed my faucet was leaking." She didn't know what to say. "Do you know why I hold these interviews here instead of at my office? Because an office is a stage. People sit where you tell them, say what they think you want, and leave. A home tells the truth. I wanted to see if anyone who walked in here would see the truth. You're the first who did." Heat rose to her face. She was not used to praise. She was used to being overlooked. "Mr. Hale, I appreciate that. But I should be honest, too. I don't have a degree. I've never worked in an office. I don't know how to use a spreadsheet or schedule a meeting the way a real assistant does. I know I'm not what you're looking for on paper." He smiled, the first real smile she'd seen. "Paper is the last thing I'm looking for. I can teach you spreadsheets in a week. Scheduling, filing, email. Those are skills, and skills can be learned by anyone willing to work. But what you just did, walking into a stranger's home and fixing something without being asked, that isn't a skill. That's character, and character can't be taught. Can you start Monday?" She stared. "Monday? I don't joke about hiring, Nia." She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again, and a deep, scarred, tired part of her that had been let down too many times would not let her say yes. "Can I think about it?" He looked surprised. No one had ever asked him that. "Of course, take all the time you need." The elevator down felt longer than the ride up. She stood in the mirrored box and felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. And it terrified her. On the train home, she watched the stations run backward, the clean platforms fading into flickering light, and her mind raced. People like Desmond Hale don't help people like me for free. There's always a catch. There's always a price. She had learned that the hard way. The restaurant in Harlem, where the owner promised her full-time and benefits, let her work doubles for 3 months to prove herself, then hired his nephew instead. And before that, Andre, Zuri's father, who promised to stay, promised to be there when the baby came, and left 6 weeks before Zuri was born. No note, no call, gone like smoke. She had stopped trusting promises. Promises were just words people used to get what they wanted before they disappeared. Miss Hattie was on the sofa with Zuri when she got home, reading a picture book. "Mama!" Zuri ran to her. Nia knelt and held her, breathing in crayons and peanut butter. "Did you get the job?" "We'll see, baby. We'll see." Miss Hattie rose slowly, wincing on her bad hip, and read Nia's face without a word. He offered you the job and you're standing there like somebody stole your lunch. It feels too good, Miss Hattie. Things that feel too good always end bad. The old woman took Nia's hands in her warm, wrinkled ones. Child, you have been fixing everyone else's problems your whole life. Your grandfather's legacy, my pipes, this whole building. When are you going to let someone fix something for you? Nia looked away. She had no answer. That night, after Zuri was down, Nia lay on the broken sofa and stared at the ceiling. The pipes groaned. A neighbor's TV murmured through the wall. She turned her head to the corner where Pops's toolbox sat, dented and scratched, right where it always sat. A quiet reminder of who she was and where she came from. She heard Zuri's small voice from earlier, and Miss Hattie's, "Let someone fix something for you, for once." She closed her eyes. Her chest was tight. Then she picked up her phone, and in the dark she typed 4 words. "I'll be there Monday." She pressed send before she could change her mind, pulled the blanket to her shoulders, and whispered, "One more time." "I'll trust. One more time." Monday came faster than she expected. Up at 4, coffee, Zuri's cereal. Miss Hattie at 7:30. Go show them who you are. Hale Capital Partners filled the 38th floor of a glass tower on 6th Avenue. $4 billion in real estate, 200 employees, and now one of them was her. The lobby was nothing like the penthouse. Louder, colder, fast. Men in tailored suits, women typing on their phones as they walked, everyone busy, no one looking up. She wore the same blouse and slacks, the same scuffed flats, the same sewn purse. She took a breath and rode up. A young woman from HR met her, friendly and formal, and handed her a badge, a laptop, and a company phone, then walked her to a desk just outside Desmond's corner office. "This is your workstation. His schedule is in the calendar, his calls forward to this line. If you need anything, Vanessa Poole's office is down the hall." Then she was gone. Nia sat in the expensive chair that adjusted 6 ways she didn't understand and opened the laptop. The screen filled with icons and programs she had never seen. It might as well have been another language. And for the first time since she walked into that penthouse, she felt something she was not used to. Fear. Not the fear of hunger or cold or being alone, those she knew. This was the fear of failing at something she actually wanted. She could fix a water heater in the dark, unclog a drain with a wire hanger, carry 50 pounds up 3 flights without stopping. But she did not know how to send a calendar invite. Down the hall, a door opened. Vanessa Poole, tall, sharp, natural hair pulled back tight, reading glasses, a tablet under her arm, efficiency in human form, passed her desk and gave her a quick look. Brief. But Nia felt it. The look of someone measuring you and coming up short. A few minutes later, through Desmond's door, she heard Vanessa's voice, clear and direct. "You hired a hotel maid with no experience to be your personal assistant. I hope you know what you're doing." A pause. Then Desmond, calm and steady. "I always know what I'm doing. She doesn't know the software. She'll learn. She doesn't have a degree. Neither did my mother, and she was the smartest person I ever knew." Silence. Then heels clicking away. Nia put her shaking hands on the keyboard anyway. She did not know where to start, but she started. Because Nia Freeman did not give up. She had never had that luxury. The first week was brutal. On Monday, she sent an email meant for the accountant to the entire company contact list. 312 people received a confidential tax form, and it took the IT department an hour to recall it. She sat at her desk the whole time feeling like the floor might swallow her. On Tuesday, she double-booked 2 meetings. Desmond walked into an empty conference room, and then had to apologize to a room of investors. He didn't yell. He didn't even frown. He said, "Double-check the calendar before you confirm, always." On Wednesday, she printed a 60-page report on the wrong paper size, every page cut off on the right, and had to reprint the whole thing because she didn't know how to change the tray. By Friday, she had made 11 mistakes. She kept count. She wrote each one in a small notebook from her purse, not because anyone told her to, but because that was who she was. She paid attention. She tracked what went wrong so it would never go wrong again. Every evening she rode home, picked up Zuri, made dinner from whatever was in the fridge, put her daughter to bed, and then sat on the broken sofa with her phone and searched. How to use a work calendar, How to write a professional email, spreadsheets for beginners. She watched tutorial after tutorial, pausing, rewinding, taking notes on the backs of grocery receipts. She practiced on her phone, fake events, fake emails, learning the language of a world that had never been built for her, one video at a time until 1 in the morning, sometimes later. Then she set the alarm for 4:30 and slept 3 hours. Some nights, Zuri wandered out. "Mama, why are you still up?" "Just learning, baby. Go back to sleep." She'd tuck her in, kiss her forehead, and go right back to the screen. The second week, she made 7 mistakes. The third week, 3. By the end of the first month, 1. A small typo she caught herself before anyone saw it. Desmond noticed. He said nothing to her directly. He didn't need to. But one afternoon, he leaned in Vanessa's doorway. "How's Nia doing?" Vanessa looked up, her expression measured as always, but something in her voice had changed. Something close to reluctant respect. 3 mistakes this week. Last week it was 11. So, improving. He nodded. "Good. She still doesn't know how to build a pivot table. Do you know how to stop a burst pipe?" Vanessa stared at him. He smiled and walked away. That same week, in a meeting where Nia sat in the corner taking minutes, someone pushed a candidate with 15 years of experience and a long list of credentials. Desmond shook his head. Credentials are easy to collect. Character isn't. The most dangerous hire is someone who thinks they already know everything. Give me someone hungry to learn over someone comfortable with what they know. Nia wrote the sentence down, word by word, and circled it. She didn't know why. It just felt important. On the train that night, she read it again and whispered it like a prayer. 1 month in, something happened that changed everything. It was a Tuesday, 9:15. Nia was organizing the week's schedule when she heard shouting from the lobby downstairs. Through the glass, she saw people moving too fast, a security guard on his radio. She took the stairwell down, and she heard it before she saw it. A low, rushing sound, like a river underground. Then a scream. When she pushed open the door to the ground floor, she stopped. Water, spreading across the marble lobby in a thin, steady sheet, pouring from under the door to the basement utility room. People were backing away, lifting their bags, pulling their shoes from the water like it was dangerous. Vanessa was in the middle of it, phone to her ear, voice sharp. "What do you mean, 3 to 4 hours? We have investors arriving in 45 minutes. Get someone here now." She hung up and turned to Desmond, who had come down from his office, his face calm and his jaw tight. "Maintenance says the plumber can't come until this afternoon. A pipe burst in the basement. They think it's a main line. The lobby of one of the most respected investment firms in Manhattan was flooding, and in under an hour, a group of foreign investors would walk through the front door expecting polish." "Can we move the meeting?" Desmond asked. "To where?" Vanessa said. "Every room is booked, and they're already coming from the airport." Around them, people panicked. Someone suggested towels. Someone suggested the fire department. No one knew where the water was coming from or how to stop it. No one except Nia. She had been down in that basement 2 weeks earlier, hunting a light bulb for Desmond's lamp, and she had noticed the utility room, the pipes, the layout. Without a word, she walked across the wet floor, her flats splashing, pushed open the basement door, and disappeared down the stairs. The basement was dim and damp, and the sound was louder here, a hissing spray like a garden hose on full. Here is something everyone should know, and almost no one does. Every building has a main shut-off valve, the one valve that controls all the water coming in. When a pipe bursts, the first thing to do is find it and close it. But 9 out of 10 people who live or work in a building have no idea where it is. So when the emergency comes, they panic and they wait, and the water keeps coming. Nia did not wait. She scanned the wall of pipes and found the main valve in under 30 seconds. A big red handle near the floor, half hidden behind a shelf. She grabbed it with both hands and turned it clockwise, hard. It was stiff, unturned in years, but she was strong. The hissing stopped. The water stopped. Then she followed the pipes to the source. A coupling joint on a secondary line had vibrated itself loose over years of pressure and no maintenance. Not a crack, not a break. A fitting a wrench could set right in 10 minutes. She found a toolbox on the shelf, took out an adjustable wrench, tightened the coupling, checked the seal, and slowly reopened the main valve, watching for any drip. Nothing. The pipe held. She wiped her hands on her slacks and walked back upstairs, past everyone, and returned to her desk to finish the schedule as if nothing had happened. 20 minutes later, the investors arrived. The lobby was clean, the floors dry, the meeting perfect. They signed a preliminary agreement worth $80 million and never knew a thing. But Desmond knew. He had watched her disappear into the basement and come back calm and quiet with wet shoes and damp hands, and he had asked Vanessa what happened. She went to the basement, found the shutoff, stopped the water, and fixed the pipe herself in 20 minutes. He said nothing. He stood in the glass conference room shaking hands and talking about growth, but his eyes kept drifting through the glass to her desk, where she sat typing, her face calm, as if she had not just saved a multi-million-dollar deal with a wrench and a pair of steady hands. She had not asked permission. She had not waited for instructions. She had seen what needed doing and done it. And Desmond thought of his mother, Coretta, who never called the landlord when the heat broke but went to the hardware store, bought the part, and fixed it herself, who never waited for rescue, never asked for help, just did what needed doing. Nia was the same. And he was beginning to understand that this woman who had walked into his home a month ago in thrift store clothes was the most remarkable person he had ever met. Nia did not know any of that. She just went back to work. In the weeks that followed, something changed between them, subtle at first, almost invisible. Desmond started asking her real questions, not about his schedule, but about life, about people, about things that had nothing to do with spreadsheets. One afternoon, he called her into his office. On his desk were architectural plans for a new affordable housing project in the Bronx, one of his biggest yet. "What do you think of these?" She studied the layouts, the room sizes, the kitchens. "I don't know anything about real estate, Mr. Hale. But I know what it's like to live in a building where the landlord doesn't care, where the heat doesn't work and the pipes leak and nobody comes. If you're building these for people like me, maybe you should ask people like me what they need." He stared at her a long moment, then picked up the phone and called his design team. "I want a community feedback session before we finalize these. Real tenants, real input. Set it up this week." He hung up and looked at her. "Thank you." "For what?" "For telling me the truth. Everyone else tells me what I want to hear. You tell me what I need to hear. That's rare." He began including her in more conversations. Building materials, floor plans, neighborhoods, not because she was an expert, but because she had lived the life his tenants would live. And people noticed. First small things, a raised eyebrow, a whisper. Within weeks, the rumors moved through the office like smoke. "Have you seen how much time she spends in his office? She's a personal assistant. Why is she looking at blueprints? Gold digger. She's using him. She fixed a pipe. That doesn't make her a business advisor." That last one was Vanessa in the hallway, not with cruelty, but with genuine concern for Desmond and the company. It stung all the same. Nia did not react. She did not confront anyone or defend herself. She kept working. But that night, alone in the dark apartment with the pipes groaning, she pulled her knees to her chest on the broken sofa and thought about the woman in the break room who had stopped talking the moment she walked in and started laughing the moment she walked out. She had been through worse, slept on the street, gone days without eating, been fired and cheated and abandoned. But this hurt differently, because for the first time in her life, she had started to feel like she belonged somewhere. And now the place she belonged was telling her she didn't. 3 weeks later, Desmond invited her to a company dinner in Tribeca, a formal event to celebrate a closed deal. He told her she'd earned her seat because she'd saved the investor meeting. She almost said no. She owned nothing fancy enough. But a dress arrived at her apartment. Emerald green. Simple, elegant. She put it on and barely recognized the woman in the cracked bathroom mirror. The restaurant had cloth napkins and candles and warm light and people dressed like magazine pages. She sat beside Desmond, hands in her lap, back straight, polite and calm, doing everything right. And then Sloane Whitcomb walked in. Tall, honey-brown skin, hair in a perfect bun, a black dress that cost more than Nia's rent for a year, a partner at a venture firm, and one of the most connected women in New York finance. She was also Desmond's ex. She crossed the room in air kisses and practiced smiles. And when she reached the table, her eyes swept over Nia. The way you look at furniture, you haven't decided whether to keep. Desmond, lovely event as always. Then to Nia, and who is this? Nia Freeman, Desmond said. She works with me. Sloane tilted her head. Works with you, how wonderful. She sat, lifted her wine. Tell me, Nia, where did you go to school? The table went quiet. Not completely, but enough. I didn't finish college, Nia said, her voice steady. Sloane raised her eyebrows. Oh, how refreshing. A sip of wine, a smile. Desmond always did like his charity cases. The silence that followed was absolute. The waiter stopped mid-pour. Someone coughed. Nia felt the old heat rise. Shame, anger, the urge to shrink, to disappear, to be invisible again. But she did not shrink. She looked directly at Sloane and said clearly, I may not have a degree, Miss Whitcomb, but I know the difference between a person who builds things and a person who just buys them. Silence again, but different this time. Not pity, something closer to respect. Sloane's smile faltered, her glass paused halfway. Before she could answer, Desmond spoke. He did not raise his voice. He put his hand on the back of Nia's chair and looked at Sloane the way you look at someone who has just made a serious mistake. Nia is not a charity case. She is the most capable person in this room, and I would trust her with my life before I'd trust most people here with my lunch order. Then he picked up his fork and ate, as if nothing had happened. Sloane said nothing for the rest of the dinner. She left early. In the car home, Nia stared out at the city lights smearing past like wet paint. Thank you, she said finally. For what you said, I meant every word. I know, but it doesn't change anything, does it? Your world, Desmond, the people in it, they'll never see me as one of them. No matter how many pipes I fix or meetings I save, I'll always be the charity case, the girl from the Bronx, the one without the degree. He wanted to argue. He wanted to tell her she was wrong. But he could feel the truth in it, heavy as a stone in his chest. You are not what they say you are, he said softly. I know that, she answered. But sometimes knowing isn't enough. She turned back to the window, and for the first time he felt that he was losing her. Not to another person or another job, but to a wall neither of them had built. A wall the world had put between them, that no amount of money could tear down. That night, she could not sleep. She kept hearing Sloane's voice, charity case, and seeing the polite smiles hiding judgment, the whispers at the office, the laughter that stopped when she entered a room. She had endured all of it quietly, because that was who she was. She endured, she just pushed through. She fixed what was broken and kept moving. But tonight, something inside her cracked. Not broke, cracked like a pipe that has held pressure too long. She sat up and looked from the curtain where Zuri slept, to Pops's toolbox in the corner, to the table by the door where her badge lay. She picked it up. Nia Freeman, personal assistant to the CEO. She'd been so proud the day they took that photo. Now it felt heavy as a chain. Because she had realized something she'd been trying to ignore for weeks. She was falling in love with Desmond Hale. She hadn't wanted to. She'd fought it, called it gratitude, respect, admiration, anything but love. But it was love. She knew it the way she knew a pipe was about to burst, a low rumble in the chest before the ears ever hear it. And that was exactly why she had to leave. Not because she was weak, because she was strong enough to see what was coming. If she stayed, the rumors would grow, the scrutiny would grow, his partners would question his judgment. And one day Zuri would grow up hearing people call her mother a gold digger. Nia would not let that happen. She would not be the crack in what he had built, and she would not raise her daughter in the shadow of other people's cruelty. She took out a sheet of paper and a pen and stared at the blank page a long time. Then she wrote, "Thank you for believing in me, Mr. Hale. But I don't belong in your world. I hope you find someone who does." She folded it. She packed the small bag she had carried into the penthouse on the day of the interview, set the company laptop and phone on the table beside the letter, and did not cry, though she wanted to. At 4:30 before the sun, she woke Zuri gently. "Come on, baby. We're going to Miss Hattie's early today." She dropped her off, hugged Miss Hattie without explaining, and rode the subway to Midtown one last time. The office was empty at 5. She placed the letter on her desk, set the badge on top of it, slid the utility room key under Desmond's office door, and rode down to the lobby. She stepped out into the cold, dark air before dawn and did not look back. She could not. Desmond arrived at 8:15 and knew something was wrong before he understood what. Her desk was empty. The laptop sat closed and centered, the phone beside it, and on top a folded paper, with her badge face up, her photo staring at the ceiling. He read the letter once, then again, then a third time. "I don't belong in your world." His hands began to shake. He stood in the middle of 200 people and felt completely alone, because he had heard those words before. Not from Nia. From his mother. "People like us don't get to have nice things, Desmond. I'm just a cleaning lady. I don't belong in those places." Coretta had worked herself to death believing it, cleaning other people's rooms, and never once believing she deserved more, never asking for help, never stopping long enough to let anyone take care of her. And she had died on a kitchen floor, alone, exhausted, 43 years old, standing in a hospital hallway at 16 in a t-shirt, 2 sizes too big, the only clean one he had. He had promised himself he would never let another person live like that, never let another person believe they were not good enough, never stand by and watch someone destroy themselves with the lie that they did not belong. And now Nia was doing exactly that. The same words, the same lie, the same disappearing. Vanessa opened the door and stopped when she saw his face. "What happened?" She left. A letter on her desk. "Left? What do you mean?" She said, "She doesn't belong in my world." Vanessa set her tablet down slowly and, for the first time in 6 years, watched Desmond Hale, the man who closed billion-dollar deals without breaking a sweat, break. "I let her leave," he said quietly. "I let her think she wasn't good enough, and I did nothing." He grabbed his keys. "Where are you going?" He didn't answer. He got in his car and drove. He was going to find her. He drove to the Bronx with almost nothing to go on. She'd once mentioned a bodega with a green awning and a laundromat that smelled of bleach. His car drew stares. People watched it pass like something from another planet, and in a way it was. He parked and got out, shirt wrinkled, unshaven, eyes red, looking nothing like the man in the magazines. He went into a bodega. "Do you know a woman named Nia Freeman?" A little girl about 5? A head shake. The laundromat, same. 2 more blocks, a woman with a stroller, an old man outside a barber shop, nothing. For the first time in his adult life, Desmond Hale had no leverage, no call to make, no assistant to send, no checkbook to open. Just a man walking a neighborhood he did not know, asking strangers for help, and getting none. He kept walking, block after block, his expensive shoes going dusty, past cracked sidewalks and overflowing cans and children playing in a hydrant spray, and a woman hanging laundry from a fire escape. The world Nia had described to him, and now he was standing in it. After almost 2 hours, he came to a narrow street of old brick buildings where an elderly woman was sweeping her steps, slow, favoring her left side. "Excuse me, ma'am. I'm looking for someone, Nia Freeman. She has a daughter named Zuri." The woman stopped, read him from shoes to face, her eyes sharp. "Who are you?" "Desmond Hale. I was her employer. She left, and I need to find her." She leaned on the broom. "You're the one from the office, the rich one." "Yes, ma'am. She told me about you." "Why are you here? What do you want from that girl?" He took a breath. "I'm not here to hurt her. I'm here because I made a mistake. I let her believe she wasn't good enough. I let her walk away thinking she didn't matter, and I need to tell her she's wrong." The old woman was quiet a long moment, a pigeon landing on the rail behind her. "My name is Miss Hattie. I live across the hall from Nia. I've known that girl 3 years. I've watched her work herself half to death every day, just to keep food on the table for her baby." She pointed the broom at him. "If you hurt her, there won't be a building tall enough for you to hide in. You understand me?" "Yes, ma'am." She nodded slowly. She went back to her old night shift, housekeeping at the Ashford Hotel on 44th. "She starts at 10. His chest loosened for the first time all day. Thank you so much." "Don't thank me. Just don't make me regret it." He parked across from the Ashford at 9:45. A mid-range hotel, 12 stories, a small awning, a working place in the middle of Manhattan. At 10 past 10, he saw her through the glass of the employee entrance. pushing a housekeeping cart down the hall in a gray uniform, buttoned to the collar, her hair pulled back, moving the way she always moved. Steady, quiet, focused, fighting like she always did. He waited until 11:30, when he guessed she'd get a break, and stood outside the side door with his hands in his pockets while the city hummed and taxis passed, and no one noticed the billionaire at the employee entrance of a hotel. At 11:32, the door opened. She stepped out with a paper cup of tea, tilted her head back, and closed her eyes in the cool air. She looked tired, the kind sleep doesn't fix. Then she opened her eyes and saw him and froze the cup halfway to her lips. "Desmond," she whispered. "Hi, Nia." They stood 10 feet apart, the fluorescent light spilling out onto the pavement, an industrial washer rumbling somewhere inside, bleach and detergent in the air. "What are you doing here?" she asked, her voice careful, guarded. "Looking for the person who fixed my faucet." She closed her eyes a moment. "I wrote you a letter. I explained everything. You explained why you think you don't belong. You're wrong. I'm not wrong. Look at where I am. Look at what I'm wearing." She gestured at the uniform. "I clean rooms for $12 an hour. Your world eats people like me alive. You saw what happened at that dinner. I saw what one person said. One person who doesn't matter. It's not one person, it's everyone. Your staff, your partners, your whole world. They look at me and see someone who doesn't belong, and they're right. They are not right." His voice was quiet and steady, but underneath it something shook. "My mother cleaned rooms for a living. She scrubbed other people's bathrooms so I could eat. Double shifts, night shifts, holidays. She never took a day off. She never asked for anything. And she was the strongest person I ever knew, until I met you." Nia looked away, her eyes shining, blinking fast. "I'm not asking you to be in my world, Nia," he said, and took a step closer. "I'm asking you to let me be in yours." "What? Your world?" "The one where you wake at 4:30 and work 3 jobs and fix pipes and raise a daughter alone and never give up. That world. I want to be in it. I want to stand next to you in it, not above you. Next to you." A tear slid down her cheek. She wiped it fast with the back of her hand, the way she always did, like she didn't have time to cry. "Why? Why do you care this much?" "Because you're the only person in my life who sees what's broken and fixes it without being asked. Because you told me the truth when everyone else told me what I wanted to hear. Because every day since you left, that faucet in my penthouse has worked perfectly, and nothing else in my life has." She laughed, a small, wet, broken laugh. "That's a terrible reason. It's the best one I have." The night moved between them. Down the block, a taxi honked. Inside, the washer finished and went quiet. "I don't need you to save me," she said softly. "I've never needed saving." "I know," he said. "That's exactly why I'm here." She searched his face the way she searched a pipe joint, looking for the flaw, the crack, the thing that breaks under pressure, and did not find one. "Okay," she said, "but I'm not quitting this job. Not until I know this is real." He smiled, the first real smile in days. "Deal." She leaned against the wall beside him, shoulder to shoulder, both of them outside the employee entrance of a mid-range hotel in the middle of the night. It was not a penthouse or a gala or a restaurant with candles. It was a hallway that smelled of bleach, and it was the most honest place either of them had ever been. Nia did not come back as his personal assistant. She was clear about that. It had never been the right job, and they both knew it. But Hale Capital had a facilities team that handled maintenance and repairs across all the company's buildings. Not glamorous, but essential. And it needed someone who understood buildings from the inside out. Someone who could look at a broken pipe and know the difference between a patch and a fix. Someone who paid attention. Nia started the following Monday as a facilities coordinator. It was not a favor. It was not charity. It was a job that matched her skills, and she was good at it from day one. She kept her night shift at the Ashford for a while. Hale Capital from 8 to 4, Zuri in the evening. The hotel from 10 to 6, 3 hours of sleep. Because honest was all that mattered to her. Desmond did one more thing. He helped her enroll in a certificate program in plumbing and building maintenance at a community college in the Bronx, 2 evenings a week. Most people don't know that community colleges across the country offer hundreds of certificate programs that need no 4-year degree: plumbing, electrical, HVAC, building maintenance, affordable, practical, and leading straight to real jobs with real salaries. For someone like Nia, who already had the skill but not the credential, a certificate was the difference between $12 an hour and $30. She came home smelling of pipe cement and copper, her notebooks full of codes and diagrams, turning instinct into expertise, learning the official names for everything Pops had taught her by feel. And slowly, quietly, things between them changed. No grand gesture, just small things. Desmond started coming by around noon with 2 sandwiches from the deli across the street, and they'd eat in the break room and talk about buildings and Zuri's latest drawings. On weekends, he came to the Bronx, not to take Nia somewhere fancy, but just to be there. Sitting on the floor building block towers with Zuri, reading her bedtime stories in funny voices that made her snort with laughter, helping fix the crooked cabinet door that had hung wrong for months. One Saturday, Zuri looked up at him with her big brown eyes. "Are you Mama's friend?" Desmond looked at Nia, who was very busy pretending not to have heard, stirring something at the stove. "I'm trying to be," he said. Zuri thought about it, nodded, satisfied, and went back to her coloring book. At the office, Vanessa Poole, who had once questioned everything about Nia, was starting to see her differently. Nia was not the most polished or educated employee, but she was the most consistent. She showed up every day, learned fast, did the work without complaint. And she was the only person in the whole company who told Desmond Hale when he was wrong. One afternoon, Vanessa overheard her on the phone with a contractor trying to overcharge. "That's a $40 coupling, and you know it. I won't approve a $600 invoice for a 10-minute fix. Send me a revised estimate, or I'll find someone who will." Later, by the coffee machine, a colleague asked what Vanessa thought of the new facilities coordinator. She took a sip. "Maybe I was wrong about her." 6 months later, on a quiet Sunday evening, Desmond invited Nia to the penthouse, only the second time she'd been there. It looked the same. Marble, glass, the park stretching out like a dark green ocean, the coffee machine humming. But something was different. There were 2 mugs on the counter now, not 1, 2. She noticed and said nothing. He opened a drawer near the sink and took out something small, holding it up between finger and thumb. A rubber washer, old, worn, slightly misshapen. The same washer she had pulled from his faucet the day they met. "You kept it," she said, surprised. "It's the most important thing anyone's ever given me," he said. "And you didn't even know you were giving it." He set it on the counter and poured her a cup. And they sat on the same sofa where she'd sat for her interview, and he told her the whole story of his mother. Not the short version, all of it. Coretta had cleaned rooms at a hotel in downtown Chicago for 16 years, 5 days a week, sometimes 6, and put every spare dollar into a savings account for his future. The headaches started when he was 14, bad ones that made her sit down in the middle of a hallway and close her eyes. She wouldn't see a doctor, said she couldn't afford to miss a shift, said they'd pass. They did not pass. One Tuesday morning when he was 16, she collapsed making a bed at the hotel, the fitted sheet still in her hands. A stroke. By the time the paramedics came, she was gone, and he was the one who identified her body, standing in a hospital hallway with no father, no siblings, no one to call. "I built everything I have because of her," he said, his voice low, his hands clasped, his jaw tight. "Every building, every deal, every dollar. Because I was terrified that if I ever stopped, if I wasn't rich enough, strong enough, I'd lose the people I love the way I lost her. And then I met you, and you scared me, because you reminded me of her. The same strength, the same stubbornness, the same refusal to ask for help. And I thought, if I just give her enough, if I fix enough things around her, maybe I can save her. Maybe I can do what I couldn't do for my mother." The penthouse was quiet, the city glowing below, the coffee going cold. Nia looked at him a long time. She did not rush. Then she said the thing no one in his life had ever said to him. "You've been trying to save your mother in every person you meet. But Desmond, you can't fix everything. Sometimes the bravest thing isn't fixing. Sometimes the bravest thing is letting someone help you." He did not move. He stared at the floor, his jaw trembling, and his eyes filled slowly, the way a glass fills from the bottom. Quiet, steady, impossible to stop. A tear fell. Then another. Then his shoulders shook, and Desmond Hale, who had not cried in 18 years, who had built an empire on discipline and control and never showing weakness, broke down on his own sofa with the city lights shining through the glass like a million small witnesses. Nia did not hug him, or tell him it was okay, or try to fix it. She just sat close enough that their shoulders touched, and she stayed. That was all. She stayed, and that night, for the first time in 18 years, Desmond did not feel alone. Neither did Nia. 1 year later, everything was different and nothing was. Nia had finished her certificate program at the top of her class. Desmond sat in a plastic folding chair in the community college gym, surrounded by families cheering and children running the aisles, and clapped louder than anyone. She had been promoted to building operations manager at Hale Capital, overseeing maintenance and repairs across the entire portfolio with a team of 8, a real salary, and health insurance for the first time in her life. Zuri was in first grade now, with her own bed in a new 2-bedroom apartment, still in the Bronx, small kitchen, narrow hall, but theirs, every square foot of it, earned. Pops's toolbox sat in the living room now, not in a dark corner, but on a shelf by the window, where the morning light hit it. On a quiet Saturday evening in October, Desmond came to the old studio, where Nia was packing the last of her things to move out the next day. He stood in the doorway and looked around. The cardboard boxes, the bare mattress, the curtain that used to divide Zuri's bed from the rest. The water stain that never got smaller, and in the corner the broken sofa, still sagging, still propped on a stack of old phone books. "I want to do something," he said, "before you leave this place." He walked to the sofa, stood in front of it a moment, and got down on one knee. Nia's breath stopped. He took out a small box and opened it. Not the biggest diamond, not the flashiest setting, but simple and real. "Nia," he said, his voice steady, his eyes full. "I don't want to give you a new life. I want to share the one you already built. You built it with your bare hands, in this apartment, on this sofa, on 3 hours of sleep and cold coffee and a toolbox your grandfather left you. And it's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. I don't need you to be someone else. I don't need you to fit into my world. I just need you to let me sit next to you on this broken sofa for the rest of my life." She looked at the ring and at the sofa and at the apartment where she had cried herself to sleep more nights than she could count, where she had whispered into the dark, "Just this once. Let something good happen." "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, Desmond, yes." From behind the curtain a small voice shrieked, "Mama said yes," and Zuri came flying out and launched onto Desmond's back, nearly knocking him over. He laughed and caught her, and Nia laughed and cried at the same time, and the three of them sat tangled together on the broken sofa, holding on. The sofa was broken, the apartment was small, the ring was not the biggest, but it was the most real thing either of them had ever felt. The wedding was small, on purpose. No ballroom, no cameras, just the people who mattered. They held it in a community garden in the Bronx, 3 blocks from Nia's old apartment, on a clear Sunday afternoon in May, the air smelling of cut grass and the roses someone had planted along the fence years before. Miss Hattie sat in the front row in a blue dress she'd bought special, and a hat so wide it blocked the view behind her, and she cried before the ceremony even started. Vanessa Poole sat 2 rows back, posture perfect as ever but her eyes soft. There not as chief of staff but as Nia's friend, something neither of them would have predicted a year before. The doorman from the penthouse building, the one who had once looked at Nia like she didn't belong, was there too. Desmond had invited him, and months earlier the man had quietly apologized, and Nia had accepted without hesitation, because that was who she was. And in the front, holding a basket of petals, stood Zuri in a white dress with a yellow ribbon, having practiced the walk 11 times in the living room the night before. Nia wore a simple white dress from a boutique in Harlem, elegant and clean and hers. She carried no bouquet. Instead, she carried Pops's old wrench in her left hand, wrapped in a white ribbon. The same wrench from the toolbox he'd left her, the one she'd used 1,000 times to fix what other people couldn't be bothered to notice. Desmond saw it and smiled because he understood. They wrote their own vows and kept them short. Nia said, "I promise to fix what's broken and to leave alone what isn't. I promise to pay attention, always." Desmond said. "I promise to stop trying to save everyone, and to start showing up for the people who matter. Starting with you, starting today." When the pastor pronounced them husband and wife, Zuri threw her petals in the air and shouted, "Finally!" And the whole garden laughed. 6 months after the wedding, Nia opened Pops's Workshop, a free vocational training program in a renovated storefront in the South Bronx. The hand-painted sign over the door read, "Pops's Workshop. Learn to fix things, learn to fix your life." It taught basic plumbing, electrical repair, and building maintenance to single mothers and young adults from low-income backgrounds. Nia designed the curriculum herself, from everything Pops had taught her and everything she'd learned since. Desmond helped with the funding and the space, but the vision was hers, every inch of it. She taught 3 days a week in work boots and a tool belt, down on her knees beside her students, showing them how to read a joint, how to find a leak, how to shut off a main valve, how to hold a wrench so it wouldn't slip. The way Pops had taught her, with patience and respect, and the belief that knowing how to fix something is not just a skill, it is dignity. One afternoon, a young woman came in, maybe 19, her clothes wrinkled, her shoes worn through at the toe, her eyes red and tired. She stood in the doorway like she might turn and leave, but she didn't. She walked up to Nia and said, barely above a whisper, "Can you teach me? I don't have any skills. I don't have anything." Nia looked at the tired eyes and the worn shoes and the fear, and she saw herself standing in the doorway of a penthouse holding a blouse she'd ironed with a pot, wondering if she was enough. She smiled. "That's exactly what I said once." She pulled out a chair. "Sit down. Let me tell you a story about a leaking faucet." And as she began to speak, Desmond watched from the doorway, and he did not interrupt, because he did not need to. He had everything he'd ever wanted. Not because of the money or the buildings or the deals, but because the woman he loved had taken every hard thing life had thrown at her and turned it into something that helped someone else stand up. That is what this story is about. Not money, not romance, not fairy tales, character. What you do when no one is watching and no one is asking. Nia proved it the moment she fixed a faucet in a stranger's kitchen. She didn't do it for a reward or to impress anyone. She did it because something was broken and she knew how to fix it. That is character, and character needs no degree, no title, no permission. The world tells single mothers they are not enough, that they need more education, more experience, more credentials, more everything. Nia proved that being enough has nothing to do with diplomas or bank accounts. It has to do with showing up, with paying attention, with refusing to walk past something broken when you have the hands to fix it. And sometimes the people who fix things for a living are the very ones who can fix what's broken inside us. Desmond was a billionaire with a penthouse and a park view, and he could not fix the loneliness in his own chest. But a woman with a wrench and a 10-cent washer could, because she didn't try to fix him. She just stayed. And sometimes staying is the bravest repair of all. This story is a work of fiction. Every event, character, conversation, company, institution, and situation in this narrative is entirely imaginary, created for storytelling and to explore dignity, fairness, courage, and the human cost of prejudice. Nothing here represents actual events or should be read as fact, but the people it points to are real. There are millions of Nias out there right now. Single mothers working 2 and 3 jobs, sleeping a few hours a night, skipping meals so their children can eat, carrying real skill the world refuses to value because it didn't arrive with a diploma. If you are one of them, hear this. Your hands tell a story no degree ever could. The calluses on your palms, the strength in your back, the knowledge in your fingers. That is your resume, and it matters. You matter. Pay attention to the people the world overlooks because you never know. The person fixing your faucet today might be the one who fixes your heart tomorrow. Dignity is not a privilege, it is a basic right. So this week, do the small, unglamorous thing for the person everyone else walks past. Sit down beside them, pay attention, and stay. Stories don't change policy, but they change how we see the people policy is meant to protect, and that is where every change begins.